Hi everyone, just wanted to come on and do a sort of update about the changes to the Earth energy grid that we're all experiencing at the moment. I know I'm not the only dowser, geomancer to talk about these things, but I think I want to address it because it's quite a big shift in what's happening, and it has important meanings for us as individuals and collectively. So anybody who's been monitoring energy lines at the moment knows that there's been some big shifts in regard to the size, the frequency, and the sort of harmonics of energy lines, if you like, that they're coming into synchronicities. There are many different types of lines. There are huge emperor lines that circumnavigate the world. There are lesser lines. There are tiny lines that literally cover so much of the Earth's surface in this complex grid network. Think of them like arteries, veins, and capillaries. And what we've seen is previously they sort of vibrated to different frequencies, they moved at different rates. Well, they're all kind of coming into synchronicity, is the best way to describe it. And it's very much like an orchestra tuning up as they move into another pitch before they're about to play another piece of music. And it's as if the world has been playing one piece of music for the last 2,000 years, and now it's retuning to play another piece. And this means that we individually and collectively are going to be going through periods of change, because Earth energy is a powerful tool for unlocking our own potential, understanding our own unique path, and achieving personal growth. So all the places that we live in hold valuable lessons and reflections that guide us towards balance and self-realization. So when we move somewhere, the places that we live, they hold unique lessons and challenges. And in its energy blueprint, it kind of holds up a mirror to where we are in our own path. So if we look at the basic feng shui view of Earth energies as yin and yang, when we have an imbalance of yin and yang in our landscape, so the different types of lines, we often find sort of that mirrors the imbalance in our own energy. So by addressing and healing the energy in our landscape, we are then called to take action to heal that energy in our own lives. But what it means is we're going to be moving into a whole new different way of being. Now, for those of you who don't know me, I started having experiences on Earth energy nodal points as a very young child. So I could see these energy places in the landscape, and I still can, and I can see energy. And I found places in the landscape that enabled me to have very strange out-of-body and altered states of consciousness experience. That got massively accelerated when, as a 9-year-old child, my family decided to move back to our ancestral home of Ireland. And this literally catapulted me into almost being perpetually out of body and in altered states of consciousness, because the landscape was very raw. There was still not as many buildings. It was very rural. There were a lot of intact, sacred, not intact, but still sort of sacred sites that hadn't been demolished. There was a much more tangible network of old sites that utilized an ancient technology of stone and its paramagnetic and piezoelectric properties, of structures that captured and held this earth energy. And these nodal points were a place that I very quickly discovered enabled me to have sort of out-of-body experiences, to travel down these lines, to go into other interdimensional space. And I had a lot of almost training from a very young age for these spiritual beings that I would encounter in these other spaces. They would talk about how ancient man had utilized this technology, built this technology, how these nodal points were a place where the lines, in fact, were mechanisms for people, the soul, to pass seamlessly into these other dimensions. So nodal points were a place of worship and ceremony where we could have altered states of consciousness as a living person. And so people weren't, interned there or buried there. but they are buried next to ley lines because of energy lines, because they are the dead roads. They're the roads that the soul travelleth to go into these next dimensions. So I think what this change is we're seeing a shift in this earth energy, more in keeping with how I was actually shown it was in past epochs. More of a similar structure. Yes, it's evolved, but sort of like the structure kind of changed. And in its change, as the earth changed, we came out of sort of like this collective thinking, collectiveness, and unity as a species. And we moved into this epoch of individualism. So we think in our own heads. We all see ourselves as discrete units, and a tree is a tree and it's not connected to anything else. And yet in that way of being, we can see that everything is interconnected. I am connected to other people. I'm connected to every rock. The earth is connected to space. Cosmic weather affects us the same as earth weather affects us. And that we are surrounded by sort of everything has spirit and consciousness. And that was very much in this way of thinking. And it's also the way you have to think when you go into these other spaces. So the best way I can describe it is how we think now in a day-to-day basis is not how you experience thought when you go into these other dimensions. Is very, very different. So thought is almost like a felt experience. It is a kind of language, but if you heard, the best way I can describe it is when I go into these spaces, I am thinking, I know I'm thinking, I can hear thoughts going on in my head. But if I actually went to speak, I can't speak. The speech would interrupt that whole throat. I would probably hear gobbledygook coming out of my mouth. That's where when I used to work with healing people one-to-one, I would just say, I can't speak, because if I speak, it changes the whole experience and the way I have to think. And I don't think that the language is such as a problem. I think probably language arose as a means to express these sort of vibrations and feels that we were feeling through a vocalization of the sound. So a frequency will go and I think we started maybe many, many epochs ago to vocalize those frequencies, to attune to them. But over the time, language has become very literal in its meaning. It has become to describe things and situations and objects. And so that the vibratory nature of language and what it represented, very little of that is left. The sound of a word almost is, in my experiences, other dimensions, is that the sound of a word actually encapsulated the vibrational frequency of the thing it was describing. And I would say a lot of that actually doesn't happen as our language has evolved and changed, so that our language reflects the fact that we've got into this individual thinking. So because energy, what I want getting at really is that energy lines, are a frequency, they are vibration, and they are changing a lot at the moment. So emperor lines are going massively wider. They're getting sort of like mirror images themselves, or as Rory Duff calls them, shadow lines, which I've been talking to him about. There are huge changes in this sort of base level vibration that I've always been able to hear in the landscape. And the energy waves coming out of geological fault lines are changing. So often when you get to geological fault lines, what I see, if there's a fault line under the ground between my hands as the earth is crumpled up, and energy comes out of the fault line and it pours out almost like water, and it flows across the surface so many inches deep. And it used to flow sort of slightly faster than walking with pace. And what I've noticed now is these flows of energy, they're coming out more frequently, they're coming out faster. There's like a deeper flow above surface level. These levels, when they hit a ditch or a bank, it flows into them. It gets captured almost like a water pool. So where we get henges in the landscape, ditch structures, it flops into the ditch and it can't climb out the bank the other side. And when you place something within the henge, because of the quality of this energy, this spiraling patterns that go through it, like these vortices, the thing within the henge gets influenced by this energy. So, and we have lots of similar mechanisms to capture this energy in stone circles, in chambered cairns, in henges, in these different sort of geomantic structures. So there were a technology to capture these different energies, and some of those technology was to enhance plant life and human physical life, so an animal health, and some of those spaces enable us to have altered states of consciousness because of the various frequencies they hold, or in fact block out on the electromagnetic spectrum. So when we create spaces that block out certain fields by the use of stones with particular piezo or paramagnetic properties, it actually sort of acts almost like a Faraday cage and keeps certain fields and forces out. And when you keep those certain fields and forces out, what happens is that enables shifts in our neurochemistry to occur, so that our brain produces DMT as if we are asleep. You know, so DMT is our dream chemical that our brain naturally produces every night. And it produces that every night in response to changes in the light spectrum due to the Earth's position to the sun, obviously, and then changes in the electromagnetic fields of the Earth as a result of us moving away from facing the sun. And also that's more prevalent when we're near these geological fault lines. So we are highly attuned to these Earth energy fields. And what's happening now is I see that we're returning to be able probably to experience these changes over the coming years. Now, the lines are sort of coming into harmonic frequency more often. So while it was, for a couple of years ago, it was like, oh, it would happen short and briefly over a short period of time. Now that's sort of increased. They're coming into harmony much more often. So it's like exponentially it's growing. So they'll be in harmony for a good while, then they'll fall out of balance again, then they'll come into synchronicity and harmony again, and then they'll go out again. But they're coming into harmony for longer and more frequently each time. So it's like the whole thing is gearing up to come together. When that happens, I think we as individually and collectively will be at the point where we can get to usher in and birth a new reality. At the moment, we're at that end phase of reality, which is why I think we're seeing so much difficulty in the world, as old paradigms and old control mechanisms are trying to cling on, but they can't stop this evolution. This is a natural cycle of evolution. So we have to work out as individuals, how do we want to contribute to that new birthing, to whatever's going to come next, because it's not set in stone what's going to come next. It's for us to create. It's malleable. It's still in energy. It hasn't yet come into form. So the way we contribute to that is self-actualization and self-realization. What is it that I came in to do? So these changes in the Earth energy field impact us in that they call us to look at, we'll feel uncomfortable in our lives. We'll go, oh, you know, I don't want that old reality. I'm ready for something better and bigger and more cohesive, and, you know, to up level and to, you know, be operating at this higher frequency, because the universe is calling us. The universe is moving into this higher frequency, whether we like it or not. So it's saying, do you want to step up? And do you want to come on this journey? Or are you going to try and cling on to what you had before? And this is a question that each of us are being called to answer. And I think as this shift from one paradigm to the next occurs, I think we're in for quite a challenging period. Personally, that's just my opinion. But I know, you know, people thought, you know, somebody asked me the other day, you know, do you think, oh, we're going to go into world peace and all the rest of that You know, those would it be better if, you know, wouldn't it be better for everybody if we could move into, you know, a stage of peace? But traditionally, knowing human beings, peace is usually hard won. And there will be, you know, sections of society that do not want to move into that, that want to keep things where they are. So I think we're in for challenging times. And I think that will be on socio-political level. I think it'll be on a physical level with these sort of more pulses that I've witnessed coming out of even minor fault lines, and I live near one. It's just tiny, but the energy coming out of it now is massively increased. And that vibration feels like it's going to the center of the earth, which I wouldn't be surprised. You know, I suspect we're in for seismic activity, which I think we've started to see, you know, with volcanoes erupting and things. I think we're starting to see that seismic activity. So I think in many respects, many of what we consider to be our foundations will be rocked. The very ground that we stand on, you know, will be shifting and changing in places. It won't feel stable. The very grounding building blocks of our society will start to shift, and some will crumble, and we will see that play out on the socio-political stage. And that will happen to us individually. What are the building blocks of my life? What do I hold dear? What are the foundations for my belief system and how I live my life? So it's on a spectrum, it's on a scale. We can work on the scale that we want to, but these are important shifts. And from my experience as a child, when I would go to these sites and have these outer body experiences and other mind, it's almost like going to another mind, another way of thinking. And you go into what I can only describe as dimensions or other spaces. Some of pure energy, some of pure kaleidoscopic energy, constantly going down tunnels and toroids of multicolored kaleidoscopic energy. Some places, almost like dimensions that sit very close to us, that have these other beings in them. And they were the ones that actually taught me how to do a lot of this work, that guided me to do a lot of this work, that, you know, in essence said, if you keep doing this, there's a wall in modern mankind's brain, and you have this door open at the moment between the two halves of your brain. And this is what they told me as a child. Don't let that door shut, because you need to keep doing this work to keep this door open. So I took that to heart. It was something that I've practiced, is going to earth energy sites and attuning to earth energy fields, and so to keep this door open. And it wasn't always easy. As a teenager, you could almost feel like a physiological process of it wanting to shut. And I had to keep employing the techniques that they showed me to keep this door open. And to such that, you know, in effect, I don't know whether it's cause or effect, but I know I have there's certain brain frequencies I do not have in my brain. Like I don't have alpha waves, for instance, and that's supposed to be our relaxation state before we go into the deep meditative brain waves. But I can induce like sleep brain waves while I am awake. And that is, I'm sure, down to my work with earth energy, of doing what I was instructed by these other spiritual beings, and dealing with and doing these practices. And it's all connected to earth energy. It's connected to these electromagnetic frequencies that we get down these lines. So if earth energy is changing, that will affect us all. It can't not affect us all, because we live on an electromagnetic earth, and we ourselves are electromagnetic beings. So as these shifts occur, some people will respond positively to these changes and decide, yes, you know, this is a chance for my soul to up level, to operate at new frequencies, to go into this collective, to be able to think differently. And for some people, they will try and cling on. But when you go into these other spaces, it's a really different way of thinking, and it's telepathic. It's all visual. It's imagery. It's sensed. Thoughts go on. There obviously is a language going on in your head, because you can understand your own thoughts, but it's not like when you go to speak and be normal. It's a very different thought processes. You are connected to everything. It is a field of pure love. I cannot begin to describe how you're in this wonderful all encompassing experience where you are connected to everything. You can literally feel every part of the universe simultaneously. It's the most incredible feeling. And yet, if you come to, come out, when you come back into your normal senses and go to speak, you can realize how kind of limited our day-to-day consciousness is. So if the earth energy work now, I would encourage people to visit nodal sites in your area, and just begin the work of attuning to them. We do that with love. Beware that these sites contain other consciousnesses, they contain other spirits, and just begin that work of connecting to other sites, connecting to the world around you on a different level, because change is afoot, and we want to be as prepared as possible for what's going to come, so that we can navigate our way through these new changes and start to begin exercising perhaps energy muscles that are dormant within us. They're inherent within us, but they're a little bit dormant at the moment. And to get really real with what earth energy work is all about. It is about, it provides us with all the lessons and reflections we need. It is our way of tapping into universal consciousness. It's our interweb of universal consciousness, and it's where all other consciousness exists as well. So we can communicate with other consciousnesses, we can communicate with other beings, we can experience realities beyond the reality that we normally experience as an incarnate human being, because our soul is vast and multidimensional. And it's only this level of awareness that I am embodying at the moment that is fairly limited by the human experience. But there are ways to experience more than this. These earth energy nodal points are a way of doing that. And we can astrally project down earth energy lines, so we can communicate. If everybody could do this, we could effectively communicate with all other people around the world using the earth energy grid network, which I'm sure people in the past used to do. So we didn't have to physically travel. We can go down, we can see what's there, we can communicate with people at the other end. It's just the same as picking up a phone. But the thought processes that you need to do and the energy alchemy that you need to do is a very different, is a practice, is a technique that I think we lost over time, unfortunately. So yeah, so it's really exciting, I think, what's happening with the earth energy grid. So it's basically calling all of us to say, who am I? What did I come here to be? How can I enhance my spiritual connection? How can I experience these other states of consciousness and communicate with the divine? But also, what do I need to do in my own practical daily life to begin ushering in this change? Because it's no good saying, well, I'm going to go and sit cross-legged on a mountain top for the next 5 years while this change ushers in, because we have to embody this change in our own lives. So if we're stuck in, poor relationships and dead-end jobs, we're facing a wall. We're facing a wall against our own development. So it really is time to look at how I can practically embody these bigger cosmic changes in my own life on a day-to-day basis. So of course we can meditate, of course we can go out and commune with these lines at nodal sites, etc. But if we can do that, but we've got to look at how much time we're spending on things. And so we're going to negotiate a new beginning of human society and human consciousness, and how that birthing process is going to go. It could be easy and it could just happen, or it could be a traumatic and difficult birth. I can't say. I'm inclined to think, knowing humans, that we're going to make it as hard as possible for ourselves. It could be very difficult. It could be very traumatic and bloody if we're not careful. But, how we embody that is also down to our own individual actions. How do I live on a day-to-day basis? And if we're living on a day-to-day basis with people that we love, in relationships that support us, doing work that nurtures our soul, because all work, our day-to-day work, should nurture our soul. really. We came in with gifts, and we can express those gifts through our work. It doesn't matter whether you're employed or self-employed, but we spend so much time working that our work really wants to embody our soul gifts. So, you know, one of your soul gifts would be, I really care for other people. Well, are you in a caring profession? You know, or are you doing something where you don't embody that? So it comes down to actually also how we're living our daily life. So look hard at your relationships. Are they supporting and nurturing you? If you're not, do you want them? Are you doing work that embodies your soul gifts, that nurtures your soul, that enables you to bring your gifts and talents to the world? Because as we go through this change, the world is going to need your gifts and talents, because that's why you're here now. You wouldn't be here now at this time of change if you weren't meant to be here. So you have something to offer to facilitate this change. And that is your big question. So you can use earth energy lines to go and talk to your higher self, talk to the conscious universe and say, you know, what is it that I came in to achieve? How can I facilitate this process? How can I lend my energy to support these changing lives? How can I lend my energy to support changing society? And that means actually doing something in your day-to-day life to facilitate these changes. Yes, we can meditate. Yes, we can send love. Of course, that's, you know, a huge part, and we mustn't neglect that. And it is important. But it's also important how we navigate and bring these changes into being through our own day-to-day lives. Just as, you know, in astrology, we will say, oh, you know, in my star sign this month, this is such and such. That's a cosmic energy. So what do I need to do to facilitate that in my own life? And earth energy work is the same. It often holds up a mirror to what we need to do for ourselves to ensure that we are contributing to the world that we want to see. We are adding value. We are creating a society that supports human life, animal life, plant life, all life, that we share the world and the wider cosmos with. So these are big questions that we need to be asking. I don't have all the answers to them, but I would say that earth energy is an incredibly powerful tool for unlocking your own human potential, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. It is a phenomenal mechanism to open doors into other realities and other consciousness that is available to us. And the way the earth energies are powering up and shifting at this moment, it is moving us into a different way of being, a different way of thinking, a different way of being in our own minds, a different way of being together, a different way of being within ourselves, and a different way of being together collectively. I think we're in for some big changes over the next period. When these lines come into harmonics, which looks like they'll probably do at the end of the year, beginning of next year, March time, when they'll be in a fairly stable harmonic frequency, I think that's almost going to be like the birth canal is open, and then the birthing process has to begin. And I think that's where we will see quite big changes happening in the world in terms of maybe seismic activity and shifts, but also, as I say, on the socio-political structures that we've created as a species, that the very foundations upon which we have built our society will be rocked, the same as the ground beneath us in places may well be rocked. And therefore our values and belief systems will also be rocked and shaken. So it's up to all of us individually to decide what we're being called to do. How do I want to grow? How do I want to be really who I came in to be? And that's just some questions I wanted to pose and wanted to share. Because yeah, there is a whole array of supportive beings and spiritual dimensions and other dimensions and realities that we can experience when we allow ourselves to expand our mind and expand how our brain actually, how our mind actually operates. And earth energy is crucial to that, because it actually influences the neurochemistry within our brain. So while these shifts are occurring, now is a brilliant time. It's an invitation. It's an invitation for you to grow and explore your ultimate human potential. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I'd love to hear about your experiences with earth energy. And if you've got any questions about anything that I've experienced, anything that I've done, do let me know what those questions are. So it's nice to spend some time with you again, and I will see you all again very soon.